So this is going to be a demonstration in watercolor of how to paint a waterfall. A first for me, because I've never ever, in painting in watercolor for probably about 55 years now, I've never painted a waterfall. So this is a first for me. So anyone else that also hasn't painted a waterfall, we're in it together. All right. So this is the Jiuzhaigou waterfalls in China, a national park. As I say, thank you very much for Duncan for his kind sharing of this source photo. And I normally choose the monthly project from our Patreon library and keep those coming, because you never know when one of your photos will be selected for one of our monthly projects. So Jiuzhaigou, I've been practicing that all day. Hopefully anyone that speaks Chinese, they'll be able to confirm that I'm pretty accurate on that. But a lovely scene. And as regards waterfalls go, how about this one for a complex waterfall? There's so much going on here. We could have chosen a very simple waterfall, but as you know on Patreon, we don't like doing the simple subjects. We like going in for the difficult ones. As I discussed on the recent Pat Chat, I think I might be approaching this with a couple of watercolor techniques. First of all, well, let me unpick the scene. Above the waterfall, I believe there's a lake that's feeding this waterfall here, and we've got several cascading plumes of vertical plumes of water coming down in that middle area there, and then in the bottom right corner, the foreground there, a very distant mountain peak, some foresty woods there over on the left-hand side. Coming from the top left-hand corner, a tree. Looks to me like a couple of trees, a pine tree and some kind of evergreen tree or a deciduous tree coming from that top left-hand corner. I don't quite like this one. I might change that. And painting from a photo is all about thinking, what can we change? Well, that might be one thing I can change there. The other thing I discussed on Pat Chat was this balcony there on the left-hand side, moving that balcony in a little bit more to the right-hand side. And also that figure there, imagine that figure a little bit closer to the edge of that platform, looking up, or maybe a couple of figures looking up into the scene. So the waterfall itself, I think there's two main areas. There's this kind of area here in that middle area, and in the foreground we've got this area. The two techniques I'm going to use are negative painting for the background here. In that, I'm going to first of all paint in the base color of the water, and then negatively paint in with darker values to try and create these plumes of water here, maybe on damp paper possibly, or with some dry brush marks, but trying to define those plumes of water coming down, the different shapes, these arching ones. We've got more of a vertical one there, all over the place there, with some vertical ones, then maybe hitting some rocks, and then sort of creating a little bit of spray, almost like a Y there. So many different shapes of those plumes. So using negative brush strokes, brush shapes to create those negative shapes. And then the bottom right corner, using body paint. So first of all, painting in the darker background, paint the rocks in first, and then with some body color, or I use white gouache, as you know, regularly on my paintings, a little bit in with trying to be careful not to overdo it with white gouache, but using a little bit of white paint here to try to create those, the water, the lighter water cascading over the the actual form of those rocks. There's another area here towards the platform going away from us. So we believe that the water is going away from us. So the water coming in here from the right, coming into a sort of plunge pool here, and then it sort of meanders its way down, further downstream. We've got the other added dimension of these trees. I really don't know how these trees are managing to survive in the middle of that waterfall. Quite a nice light one there, catching the light, and also a nice bit of contrast. We like our range of values, don't we, in watercolor? Darks against lights, lights against darks. So we've got a nice yellowy light color there against a darker background. I'll miss out that tree there. It looks like a bit of a dead tree. Probably we'll use some dry brush strokes for some of the other trees there once we've finished. So, yeah, that's the source photo. I hope you like the choice for our April project. Let me just stop screen sharing and go back to my area here. All right, there we go. So let me describe my materials to you. First of all, the paper I'm using, and the paper I recommend, is some good quality cotton, 100% cotton paper like Saunders Woodford. I'm using Saunders Woodford cold press paper, medium texture, and the weight is 300 grams or 140 pounds. This is 15 inches by 11 inches. The paints are handmade, professional grade watercolor paints from Mark Jackman in the UK, and normal colors. I'll describe the colors as I go through, but I've got neutral tint, burnt umber, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, spring green, viridian green, cobalt green, cerulean blue, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, cadmium red, light red, cadmium orange, cadmium yellow, and some gouache paints down the bottom right hand corner. 3 mixing wells, darks, cools, warms generally. And over to my right hand side, I got my water. Brushes, I will describe them, but I will be, as my brush at the moment has been for quite a few months now, is the Tintoretto synthetic mop brush, series 1407, size 6. Good point, good, it holds a lot of water, good edge to it as well. I will be using a little round synthetic brush. I might be using this flat brush. This is a Raphael Soft Aqua, 1/2 inch width. Possibly a little rigger brush from Levinson as well. All right. So on to step number 1, stage number 1, do the initial drawing. Right, let me just check and see if there's any questions first of all. No, I don't think there's any questions. Okay, well, let me crack on with the drawing then. So the main areas are as follows. I have got a few flies buzzing around here. We've got the background waterfall, which is a key element to it. And it does slope slightly uphill, left to right, and not a straight top to it. It's got a sort of bumpy, curvy edge to it. Now, in the source photo, there is this, on the left-hand side, there's this lovely mound type structure, and the water is coming down. And then I guess with the force of the water, or the height with which the water is dropping, there's a bit of a mist in this area here, and a lighter area as well, which I think those figures, they're going to show up quite well against. So imagining maybe the platform round about here. Now I've drawn that quite lightly. It will go quite darker shortly. But imagining that figure in there, all right. And that mound, let's put that mound sort of around about there. That's that mound. It's actually got a bit of a flattish edge, a flattish top to it, and then a rounded corners, and then it does come down on that left-hand side. The light, I should say, the sun is coming from the top left-hand corner. So it's going to be really light on that side there, less light on the other side. Now let's continue going over to the right, across the top of the waterfall, and then in this area here, the waterfall sort of goes in a little enclave, and then it catches the light more on that right-hand side. So goes up a little bit, and I need to remember to go uphill now as we go up to here, and then in this area here, this is where it's catching the light a bit more, and then up to the top right-hand corner. Next, coming down to the actual top of the foreground waterfall, where the water's coming from that right-hand side there at an angle, almost parallel to the top of the waterfall. And there's a couple of plumes there. There's one coming down from that direction and one from this direction. So that's the left-hand one, and then that's the right-hand fork. So this area is where I'm going to do the body painting and painting light on top of dark. That's dark on top of light, light on top of dark. And we'll see which is best. Right, so now this left-hand fork, it sort of comes down and it bounces over something, and then it comes down into this sort of plunge pool, and it splays out. In this drawing phase, I'm just going to get in the main shapes of the light areas and the dark areas. I'm not so interested in detail at this stage. Even the trees, the individual trees that we see, there is right in the middle, there's a pine tree that sort of, it looks too perfect to me, and it's actually piercing the sky, connecting with the sky. I'm not going to bother with that, all right? Trees and natural things, they're open to change and modification or removing in a painting. Right, so I've got the general angle right there. Then this viewing platform. Now, I discussed on Pat Chat, in the source photo, we're sort of looking down on it, and it can be quite a complex thing to paint, to view it from a downwards direction. So let's make life simple for ourselves, and let's imagine the platform is higher, or we are a little bit lower, and we've got the top railing of the platform, the bottom railing of the platform, and it's sort of connected with some support to the ground there. So all of this is going to be dark. Then we've got that platform there. We're level with the base of that platform, all right? Now, I'm going to have a couple of figures on the actual platform, and I'm thinking about a figure pointing up to standing here on the edge here. Maybe I can just come over just a little bit more. A figure on the edge here pointing up, and maybe, looking up and pointing to the sky. Maybe another figure arched back, looking in amazement as well at this beautiful scene. So I will imagine a figure, and in the source photo, you can see that the top of the railings is around about waist height, or up to a hip. So it sort of splits the figure in two. Let's have my figure looking up. and sort of pointing to an object up there. And do the torso and then the legs. Like that. So the figure is looking up, pointing at something that they can see, like that. And then let's have a friend looking up in amazement at what this figure is pointing to. So this figure will be, so this figure is looking up and there we are, something like that. Got to make sure not get the head too big. There we are. There's my couple of figures. You can have more figures if you want to, but two, let's keep it simple. 2 will be enough. I'm not going to draw in the foliage coming from the top left corner. The foliage is hiding what's going on over here, but I'm just imagining the waterfall sort of continuing over to the left-hand side. But again, keeping that all fairly light, because then these dark figures will show up a little bit more. Nice bit of contrast against the lighter background. Next will be, so the drawing is done. Next will be the painting, the initial wash, starting with the sky, first of all, working my way down, getting in the base color of the water, the base color of these rocks here as well. Let that dry, then go on to the second stage of the painting process. So let me just see if there's any questions. I don't think there is. Right. Painting then. I will start with the sky. Mop brush first of all. And the sky is fairly light there, a little bit darker here. And then we've got the little bit of a background of the trees and also the mountain on that right-hand side as well. So I will keep this left-hand side just pure water. And then the sky gets a little bit darker. I'm just using a bit of lavender here, or I could use a bit of cerulean blue, a bit of burnt sienna, but just making the sky a little bit darker on this right-hand side. And then we come down to the top of the waterfall. There we are. A simple sky. Next, I'm going to put in the base color of the middle area. So this is where we're going to be doing some negative painting. And this is where I want to, first of all, do a negative painting of this base color of the water, but preserving the lighter areas where that's the white, where it's really, really bright, the actual water catching light, which is on that left-hand side there. and also along this ridge of the top of the waterfall, and then a little bit more in certain places coming down from that right-hand side. All right. The color for this water is really going to be quite a cool sort of blue purplish color. Don't get sort of too hung up by exactly what color you're going to choose, but I think something cool would work quite well. So I will use a little bit of cobalt blue, a little bit of alizarin crimson, and just start from the left-hand side and define the edge of that waterfall there. And then as we go down here, we are going cooler. I will be lifting off this area here to create that mist area, probably with a damp sponge. More on that later, but this is the base color. So some of this will be lifted off to create that mist. Now, as I come down to this, this left-hand side, the middle area here, I can see a little bit of greenery. There's some shrubbery going on. So let's put in a little bit of green there. Continue on down. Just cover the paper. This will be black here. Let me just see if I can get rid of this fly. Keep on going down. Pick up a little bit of cobalt blue. Some of this area will be water, not white water, but quite cool. I think a bit of cobalt, and then continue up back into this waterfall area, and then we're going up to the top, and at the top bit of ultramarine blue. Actually, at the top, there's two or three kind of tiers of that waterfall. One there, and there's one here. And then, so a little bit of light hitting the tops of those tiers. And then we come down. There's a little bit of, so this is the right-hand side of that tier. So that's my lighter area. We're coming into a darker area here where it's concave, where it's like an indentation of the waterfall, and then creating a little, I'm leaving a little white gap there across the top of the waterfall itself, and over to this right-hand side. The right-hand side is where we're catching the light more. And then also in this area here, there's a bright yellow tree. Now, actually, let's move that bright yellow tree. I'm going to use some cadmium yellow. That's going to be my bright tree. Continue on with the base color of the water, the waterfall. Now here I need to create the edge of the nearby flow of water, and so this lighter area here. Just creating the curvature of some of these plumes of water coming down. Then there's a little gap here between that waterfall and this waterfall coming in from the right hand side. Actually, it's quite sort of green, that waterfall there. Right, continue over to the right hand side. Okay, so far so good. Now coming down into the middle area. Just trying to get rid of a fly. I'll ignore it. So this area here is going to be light on top of dark. So now I want to go darker and possibly warmer with the rock here. I think it's got quite a warmish tone to warmish value to it. So I'm going to use a little bit of burnt sienna with a little bit of ultramarine blue. And then where I want to go really dark. Now I want to make sure this area has some variety. It's quite a large area here, so I don't want to be too monotonous with the choice of color and values. So I want to try and mix it up a little bit. Now, and I will leave out this area here, again, quite light. It's just the actual plumes coming down. That's where I'm going to use the opaque white paint, gouache paint, to create the feeling of that water cascading down. Rock color then, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and if I want to go dark, I could bring in a little bit of neutral tint, but I do need to warm it up a little bit. Burnt sienna, ultramarine blue. Now there is a little bit of greenery in here. We were saying on Pat Chat that maybe when this photo was taken, there might have been maybe some high rainfall recently, and so the water levels were quite high and covering this green area here. There we are. So keep varying the tone. Actually, we'll probably get quite dark in this bottom right corner, and also at the base of this waterfall as well. Neutral tint. Burnt sienna. Now, depending on how humid your location is, that will determine how quickly, and of course the surface you're using, how quickly things are going to dry. Go a bit cooler in that right-hand corner. Use my fingertips just to blend things around and get some softer edges. Okay, so there's some in this middle area here, just beyond where the platform is. There's a darker sort of mound or ledge in that area. The platform will be painted last. So just review what I've done. Let's go in a little bit darker in places, neutral tint. So I'm just looking at the photo for a little bit of inspiration where these darker areas will be. And then in those lighter areas, that's where, when this is all dry, that's where I'll go in with the dry brush marks of the white gouache. Okay. I think it's going according to plan so far. Right, so this is still a little bit damp. That's actually quite dry now up here. Let me just see if there's any questions. Don't think there is. Right, next step is getting in those background trees and that peaked mountain up here. Right, make sure I've got something quite light. Let's get in the mountain first of all, and that's going to define the edge, the top edge of this waterfall quite nicely as well. Something cool. Check the point on my brush, and the mountain, the left-hand side of the mountain is round about there, starts there, and then rises. I want to make sure the peak is not dead center. And let's make it not too symmetrical. Just alter that right-hand edge a bit. And then down to the top of the waterfall, where it's sort of fairly straight. And then we'll just continue over to that right-hand side. There's my background mountain. With a tissue, we can just lift off a little bit of the base of that mountain where there's a little bit of mist from the lake, possibly mist coming up from the waterfall, and the darkest area of that mountain, that topmost peak. Right, now this area here has a forest, so a bit darker. Let's go in with some ultramarine blue, a little bit of burnt sienna, and again this is going to form this top edge. Bit darker. So I'll just draw in the top edge of that forest first of all, and then these conifers or pine trees. Let's have a few more over here. Some of this area will be hidden by the foliage of the tree coming down. A cooler, darker. Try and make this area not as perfectly symmetrical. Keep it cool. There we go. There's the background trees. Right. So So I think now we are ready for some negative painting in this area here. It's still, the paper is still quite damp. If I can show you my humidity, it's, well, you can see it's 62%, oh, 67%. So fairly humid. You may be a lot drier where you are. Things are dried quicker. So adjust it appropriately, and it always affects, of course, the timing. Right, for these darker areas of the rock, and we're going to negatively paint around the plumes of water to create the shape of the cascading water. I might use this brush, and or I might use my round synthetic brush. I'll start with this one first of all. Now, not too much. I think not too much paint on the brush, and something dark as well. And we'll start on the left-hand side, which I can't really see what's going on there, but as I'm coming to this area here, it does get a little bit darker. And this bottom, that bottom area of that waterfall is going to hit that misty area. Now to the main area, that middle area. I'll stick with this brush until it's not really working for me. Okay, the top of this mound. So I'm using ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, not so much water as I did do with the initial wash. And just create those, starting from the light area, just flicking up. Maybe a little bit of neutral tint if you want to go a bit darker. Now this main area here, So keep looking at the photo. Look for the shapes of these darker areas. I wouldn't bother drawing them in, first of all. Keep altering the combination of colors you're using as well. Again, like I did there, just with the fingertip, move the paint around just to get a softer edge. Okay, so we're on the right-hand side of this mound now, going to the darker area. And then just define that darker area there where it really is not catching much light at all. In here, there's a lighter area here, which is just above the yellow tree. The water is cascading down here, I think, into a little middle plunge pool here. And above that plunge pool, we've got this water. So check my brush, check the point, the shape of the point I've got. Quite a few vertical marks in this area as well. And I think these dry brush marks, they help in trying to define the edge of the water where it's sort of, you've got this spray. On this right-hand side, this is where the light is catching the waterfall a lot more, especially that one there. So let's emphasize that a little bit more with a dark value to the left of it. coming down to the top of the tree. And so there's a little bit of a ledge there, plume. Plume coming down. Let's go cooler in this little corner here. And a lot darker as well. Define the right-hand edge of this yellow tree. Right, just think this needs to be a little bit darker here. And then darker there. Darker in there. Let's go a little bit darker in that, on the left-hand side. Well, we're halfway there across that back area. Just define that yellow bush a little bit more. And then something going on down there. Maybe some lighter rocks. Right-hand side of this area. Now, the water here, this is going to be a little bit more tricky because there's some nice sort of curved shapes towards the top of the waterfall. Let's start here. There are some middle trees, which I'll do later, but first of all, that left-hand edge. Then I've got to get these curved shapes. A little bit more water. And then, so we've got a curved top to these plumes, and then it gets, of course, it gets more vertical. So I think this brush is working out quite well so far. I haven't had to resort to, that's a little bit messy, this area. Haven't had to resort to a smaller brush. Let's get in a dark area there, and darker area there. And over on this side, whereas here we've got a light edge, a white edge to the top of the waterfall. Over on the right-hand side, it's a dark edge against the sky. So let's get that in with a little bit of blue. Yeah, that works better. Top right corner, I've just noticed there's some trees here. Not sure what trees they are, but that creates a little bit of a light edge. A light edge, darker value against the lighter top of the waterfall. That whole area I'm going to cover with some foliage. Next, so that's technique number one. Negative painting. I might need to go in with some lighter white gouache in here just to create the form of that water just a little bit more. Let's just going to go in a little bit darker in some areas here. Got to remember this area here is in deep shade. All right, so next will be going in here with the lighter paint on top of this darker background. I need this to be dry. This is kind of dryish. It's a little bit damp there, but That's fairly dry. You might be able to see the paper's still a little bit buckled, but it's all right. First of all, though, just going to get in a few little areas of blue, or a slightly darker value than the white paper, to create the illusion or create the impression of a little bit of like the rapids and a little bit of shadow in some of the waves. So let's just use a little bit of blue here. Bit of cobalt blue. Make this area here a little bit darker. There we are. Now, so that's it for the, this area here is in a little bit of shade. So a little bit of blue. Like that. Right, this area here then, I'm going to change to my medium synthetic brush. And this is where I'm going to be using some white gouache, but not pure white. I need to add a blue to it just to make it, well, it's not so bright. This area here is in the shade. So the white gouache needs to be amended a little bit, adjusted a little bit with some other color. So let's just pick up a bit of white. I've got plenty of white gouache, as you can see. Let's use a little bit of cobalt blue. And need to go brighter. Now gouache will dry darker. Watercolor is going to dry lighter. Gouache is going to dry infuriatingly. It's going to dry a little bit darker. So and of course it might also pick up a little bit of the paint below as well. So this is where you've got to think of the rocks obstructing the flow of the water and then billowing out either side of those rocks as well. Perhaps a little bit of lavender might get that cooler. Of course, the photo is sort of out of focus on this bottom right corner. Keep going. So not too much water on the brush, just the right sort of consistency. Not too dry, sort of in the middle. That's why I'm spending a long time mixing here, trying to judge the right sort of consistency. And there are a few little horizontal ledges where the water's accumulating before dropping down. That's why I went darker with the initial wash here, where I can create the impression of that bit of lightness below. Bit of lightness below that darker area. So think of these different sort of tiers or levels here. Bit of lavender. And let's go over to the right hand side now. A ledge there. So a few little rounded shapes catching the light on that side. Don't want to make it too perfect as well, too regular, the spacing between these verticals. So that's my bigger area there. Not too much detail in this bottom right corner. All right, I'm nearly there with this area here. This different technique of body painting rather than negative painting. While I've got this, let's just see if I can just emphasize some of these. Some of these darker areas up here. Kind of mixing the two techniques. All right, just a little bit more down here. I want to lift out, to create the mist here, want to lift out that area with a damp sponge. So hopefully this sponge is fairly clean. Now I'm just, so it's damp already, not too much water on it. And just lifting off. That area there. Again, not make it perfectly circular, just perhaps there's a bit more mist up there. And then just turn the sponge around a bit just to get a little bit more light here. And you've got to be very careful that your paper is robust and will withstand this treatment. There we go. Hopefully a feeling of a little bit of mist there while I've got this damp sponge. Just use that on that white gouache there just to soften the edges a bit and blend it in with the rocks, the background rocks. Right, I need to let that dry. While that's drying, I can now, well, let me just see if there's any questions. Ooh, there it is. Right. So Sheila, question from Sheila, is your sponge wet or dry? It's damp. If I, this is a Spontex sponge, if I really squeezed it hard, there might be a little bit of water that comes out of it, but essentially I would say it's damp. It's quite damp, all right? So there's got to be a bit of moisture in it. And then if the paint isn't coming away, then maybe go in with that damp sponge, maybe a little bit more water, damp sponge, let it settle in for a minute or two, and then lift off with a drier sponge. So squeeze out some of that moisture and then just lift off. Just dab, 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 dab. Okay, that might work for you, Sheila. Right. Okay. Thanks very much, Sheila, for that question. Right. Okay. Let's go in with some of this foliage in the middle here. And so we've got a mixture of trees, not very dense foliage, and then also we can see some tree trunks that's kind of connecting that foliage, that canopy, with wherever they're coming from. Some of the trees are coming from here. Some are coming from down that bottom left-hand corner. Yeah, there seems to be quite a lot of trees coming from this area here. There's a tree, there's a lot of foliage there. So there's foliage there and then foliage here connected with the growing point down there somewhere, or along that line. What brush for this? I think I am going to go for my 1/2" soft aqua brush. And again, quite thick paint, not too much water, laying it down opaquely, covering the background there. I will go in with a little bit of, let's go in with some brighter green first of all. So I've got my spring green here, a mid green, a little bit of cadmium yellow. And it's got to be fairly thick. And just where I see some foliage, there's something in the rocks down there, just where I see some foliage, just go with that dry brush. And then go a little bit darker, pick up a bit of viridian green here, perhaps a little bit of ultramarine blue, a bit of burnt sienna, and then a bit more water. Just creating that back edge of that plume, a bit lighter. Foliage, cadmium yellow. See if we can go a bit brighter. Reach for the sky up there. And then a little bit of definition to that middle tree. Right, darker green in this area here. So viridian green and a bit of burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and then this has got to form that the back edge of this Y-shaped plume coming down. So I'm just covering that white area just in a few places, just where there might be a bit more foliage. And there's a kind of tree in there. Bottom of the tree. There's that little ledge there. To find a little bit more with that darker, bit of neutral tint. There we go. Here, there needs to be some darker values just behind that tree. All right, well, I think we're ready for those figures now. Let me just check if there's any questions. Oh. Question from Naomi. Is the spring green opaque? Yes, it is. I'm laying it down quite thickly there. No, almost pure out the tube. All right, Naomi, so quite thick. All right, so balcony time. And couple of figures. Right, brush for this is going to be my medium round synthetic brush, which is full of white paint at the moment. Let me just make sure that is, this is dry. Yes, it's dry. Okay, then figures for this. So we've got let's do the left hand figure first. Got to be careful because that's all wet there. Now these figures are in the shade. I'm not going to put them in very, very dark. So don't go too black with the paint, but something quite dark, all right? So I think all the white paint's come off that. Let's use a little bit of blue. I can just about see my outline of these figures. So this one here, the left-hand one first, who's looking up. Head. And then bit of a sort of arched back to the figure. Maybe this figure's got a rucksack or something like that on his or her back. And then the feet. And then figure number 2, who is pointing up. So head at an angle. And then arm pointing up. And jacket or body. Legs. I should go a little bit lower with the torso, and then legs. Getting one leg first of all, and then the other leg. Maybe this person's got a bit of a cap. All right, and the railings on top of the platform. Keep it simple. Actually, a bit more water. Keep it simple. So there's the top railing. And then the bottom platform. Make the platform a little bit thicker than that top rail. And the vertical posts. Of course, there's some posts on the other side. And maybe we'll have some diagonals. Like that. And now, actually, I'm going to go to my bigger mop brush. Now I need to block in this bottom left-hand corner, something dark. A little bit of green. And the supports. Then continue down and negatively paint around some of the turbulent water below. So there's one there. Dark, solid. And just a few little bits of greenery. I'll give the impression of something going on there in the bottom left-hand corner, but nothing too detailed. Down here, want to make the base of these rocks a little bit more defined. There we go. Right, top left corner, some foliage coming in from the left-hand side. I'm going to use a rigger brush from this, the Lebanson rigger brush, and also I need to do the tree trunks, and then I'm pretty much done, I think. So top left corner, some trees coming in, a bit of foliage coming in, neutral tint, Phrygian green, let's get in the twigs first of all. Neutral tint, Phrygian green. Don't want to obliterate the nice bit of light hitting that left-hand side. Some foliage. So it's giving some context to maybe the shadow on this side, bit of green. Just a few patches of green for the foliage. And then try and connect some of these, not have a continuous line. A bit of lost and found with these branches. More solid in the top left corner. And then a little bit less dense as we come out. Right, have I got everything? I think that guy's head needs So a little bit too big. Got to be careful here. So damp brush and just tease off a little bit of that area. Right, tree trunks. So, oops. Right, tree trunks, actually. A bit too much paint on the brush. Neutral tint, burnt umber. Check my brush and just keep going over to the left, just a few trunks. So some of these are kind of connected to this ledge here. And they're leaning as well. There is a tree coming in from the right-hand side, not do that. Nearly done. Yeah, I think that's this top area here. Let's just make that a little bit darker. That's better. I think some of this foliage could be a little bit lighter. So back to my cadmium yellow. I've got some Naples yellow light here. See if I can, this is gouache. It's dried up a bit. Actually a bit of cadmium orange as well. Yeah, it's better. Cadmium orange, Naples yellow light, or it could have used some white gouache with some cadmium orange, just to give a bit of sort of to me, it almost looks autumnal. Bit of foliage there. Yeah, I think I am done. Right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that demonstration. Waterfall, the national park. I'll try to pronounce it again. Jiuzhaigou. There we go. National Park, the Pearl Shoals. I hope you enjoyed it. And I very much look forward, those of you on Patreon, very much look forward to seeing your paintings. I might just touch this up a bit, but essentially I'm done. I hope you enjoyed. Let me just see if there's any final questions. Oh, there's a few more questions coming in.